All right, and welcome to Defense Stars. I'm your host, Bob Mata, and this is Defense Stars, and I'm joined by my beautiful and brilliant co-host, Allie. What's up, girl?
Hey, babe. Hey, all.
So, impromptu live. We've been wanting to go live for the past couple days. Had some real life shit going on, so family first, right? Always, of course. We have all these things happening, and then Kohberger decides to plead out. That's exactly how shit goes in life, though. It's like every time there's some kind of breaking news, I'm having some kind of like catastrophic shit going on. So, I mean, we're used to it, though.
History and Homicide has some good advice. Ask your dad everything you want to know. I can't ask mine now. Sorry for your loss, History and Homicide.
I do. I try to talk to him about everything. Sometimes he's talkative, sometimes he's not. It's he's an old cantankerous man, so who's very stubborn and set in his ways. So yeah, if you guys haven't heard, Friday my father had an episode, and oddly enough, we were supposed to be in Tennessee, which I had to opt out of because Scarlett had playoffs that I didn't know about at the time that we had planned this, and we had a big group of people going down there. So that was actually a blessing that we were here, because we would have driven down Thursday and had to drive right back Friday. And I don't know what would have happened if Allie wouldn't have been here. I mean, it's like if he went down, so whatever. So yeah, he had a mild stroke. It doesn't appear that there's any lasting concern.
Thank God your dad doesn't follow lives, because he would be fuming right now.
Oh, well.
It's very private, man.
Yeah, tough shit. I, on the other hand, I'm an open book. So
but he's very good, and he's getting into a great physical therapy center as a result, which he needed before. So hopefully he comes out stronger.
Yeah, and then to add to our bullshit, on Sunday night, our AC went out in the middle of a horrific heat wave. So if you guys hear a weird little sound, I had to run out and buy portable air conditioners for our house, because they haven't been able to repair the AC yet. So yeah, it has not been optimal. It has not been optimal the past few days for the Mata clan. But here we are.
With Kohberger's plea, potentially criminal, says, well, there goes the summer.
Yeah. Or that opens up the summer. It depends on how you look at it.
Right.
Not having to be chained to the computer all day, every day for 2 months. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of love that concept. So let's talk about it. It was a shocker, right? I mean, I saw it and I'm like, Allie, it looks like Kohberger's pleading. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, looks like it's going down. Because I think Eaton had reported it first. When I felt confident about posting something publicly is when Steve Gonzalez basically made a statement. I knew at that point that there had been some communications between maybe ex post facto as far as the families are concerned. But there had been communications that there was a plea agreement that had been offered or accepted, whichever the case may be, and that they were going to be pleading the case out.
So let's just in case some people in here don't know what's going on, Bryan Kohberger is entering a guilty plea in exchange for the state taking the death penalty off of the table. From a defense perspective, that is a huge win. That's basically all unless of course your client is factually innocent, that's basically everything that you're aiming for. And
Right.
it's always the reason to put up it's one of the main reasons to put up a huge fight. You need to show that you're going to fight, that you've got something to make the state feel scared about or uneasy about, so that they'll offer you a plea, because it sounds like, at least in this case, and I'm going strictly off of something I saw on X, and maybe you can confirm, babe, or maybe the chat can. I don't know if there's false profiles that are just using different names. I saw something that said the family was very upset about that, but I don't know if that's a real profile, if it's somebody who just used their names, or if they put out a real like a legitimate press release, if there's something that we've seen that's been official.
Are you talking about the families?
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think, well, Steve is going to be the father. Kaylee's dad's going to be on News Nation tonight. So I feel pretty confident. I see need some Z's. There's nothing official, and there's nothing official saying he's accepting the plea deal, other than the fact that they set a court date. So,
right, and
I
but
mean,
you are able to change your mind anytime before you enter.
you need to get on the Ethernet. You're breaking up pretty badly.
Oh, sorry, I'm on both. Let me take care of this.
You can't be on both if it's
I get
not.
it. I get it.
I thought it was me from this portable air conditioner, and then I realized you probably, because you had your computer. Oh, she gone. So yeah, they're not setting a court date. Like he's pleading out tomorrow. So for those of you who are of the mindset that this is like some kind of like false start, or that I don't know, the Kohberger thing just is weird to me with some people. But
So,
it's
Nesme says he knew he would be screwed. He knew he would, because he screwed up leaving the sheath.
I mean, look, here's the bottom line. If this guy, and we'll know for certain tomorrow when he says I'm pleading guilty, if this guy fucking killed 4 kids, fuck him. Like I don't know, Bryan Kohberger, shit. Fuck that guy. He's a monster.
Right. And although
Like, am I in crazy world? The guy, if he murdered 4 beautiful kids in the prime of their lives, fuck that guy. Period. End of conversation. And we're going to get into all this. We're going to get into all this in terms of how a plea comes together like this, why Ann Taylor did everything that she did. Ann Taylor was a phenomenal attorney for Bryan Kohberger. I mean, make no bones about that. She did her job. As Ali said at the outset, this is a huge win for the defense. She saved her client's life. When you take over a death penalty case and you start getting through the discovery, and I've seen people like, but she said he was factually innocent early on. I don't give a shit what she said. I don't care what she said early on. When the discovery starts pouring in, and remember, there's 2 parts of an investigation. There's pre-arrest and then there's post-arrest. And if you watch our channel, I've told you ad nauseum over and over and over again that a lot of information, a lot of evidence is discovered after the arrest, because they have more access to the defendant than at any point prior to the arrest. They're getting into everything. So whatever they dug up, we don't necessarily know about. But who knows more than any of us combined in terms of the evidence against her client, Ann Taylor. Pandora, you're wrong. Flat out wrong.
Babe, no one knows what you're referring to.
Oh, Pandora. Well, Pandora does.
Okay.
Pandora said Ann Taylor was a terrible lawyer.
Well, maybe you need to ask her why she feels that way.
She clearly thinks that Bryan Kohberger's innocent. I don't know.
You don't know that. Okay, so here's the thing. When sometimes people do plead guilty to crimes they didn't commit for numerous reasons. But when you're dealing with a murder case and you're looking at life in prison versus the death penalty, no one is going to plead to a crime that they did not commit. Now, could you have a mentally ill defendant who thinks they committed a crime that they didn't commit? That's a different story, but you're not pleading just because, oh my Lord, I might die if I don't, because otherwise you're going to suffer the rest of your life in prison. So I can't imagine any set of circumstances where someone would plead guilty to a crime they didn't commit in this scenario. Plus, we have
in this scenario.
Right.
Because obviously there are many, we've talked about this many times on our channel as well. There are many defendants that plead out to lower felonies, misdemeanors, and for cases that they didn't commit just to avoid jail time all the time. Happens all the time. But this is different. This is on murder charges. People usually aren't taking a murder beef and they'll take it to trial. And
now we have had somebody who they got offered, for example, 20 years. And the evidence was very strong against them because someone was going to lie. So he did accept a plea for 20 years because if he didn't, he was risking the rest of his life in prison and he was 20 years old. So it does happen even in a murder case, but I can't imagine any set of circumstances where somebody would plead guilty to an offense they did not commit just because they're not
But
going to get.
If you're talking about the client that I think you're speaking of, the offer ultimately was no jail time, which is why he took it.
No. Not on the murder case. It was second-degree murder. They reduced it to second-degree murder.
Oh, yeah.
They reduced it to second-degree murder,
and you're talking about a different client.
He got 20 years, and he can get time. He can get some
Point
good
being,
time.
People take deals on shit they didn't commit all the time, but in this type of circumstance, it's not happening. Like if anybody out there thinks that Kohberger wasn't afraid he was going to get a fair trial, that's not what's happening here. What's happening is his attorney looked at all the evidence and said, "Hey, I think that you're in deep shit here. Do you want me to talk to them to see if I can get them to take death off the table?" And that was a conversation that took place. And and it's like Allie and I talk about this as well. I mean, that's the carrot. Like I was saying this just last week, talking about Kohberger when we brought it up. I mean, that is the carrot. The death penalty and removing that in order to get them to plea is a huge carrot for them.
Right.
Like in Illinois, we like the death penalty does not exist anymore. So because if the death penalty is on the table and they refuse to take it off, Kohberger has nothing to lose by going to trial. Nothing.
Right, unless he just somehow got a conscience and decided not to put the family.
Okay, when the fuck does that ever happen? Like where are all these conscious defendants? I've never seen them. I mean, like
ridden murderers of 4 people yet.
I mean, Ted Bundy's ass never. I mean, these guys just never admit the shit. Gacy never admitted to it. Who was? I think Ed Kemper.
And
that guy came clean.
What's his name? The
Dahmer?
The one, no, the one that your
Dahmer
friend
also
covers.
came clean.
But the one your friend covers.
My friend? Give me more. I don't know. Who? Steve?
No, podcast.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about
Josh.
Israel Keys.
Josh.
Yeah.
Well, what's his podcast?
True Crime Bullshit.
Yeah,
so I mean, that like they have like a video of Israel Keys literally pulling Sarah Koenig out through the window of the coffee. I mean, he was done. Like he was So, and his thing was, I mean, and Josh has been infatuated with him because of everybody kind of was like, oh, this guy's the most meticulous serial killer of all time. I tend to disagree with that. I don't think he was the genius because he left all the kill kits all over the country, like in the event that he was going to do something down the road, which is, I mean, I guess, but in terms of him being some kind of criminal mastermind, I don't think so. And frankly, I've told Josh this. I think that the guy was full of shit. I think he was fucking with the feds for
Well, who
the
knows? But
vast majority. What do you mean?
I was just saying there's
How do you gotta
some
try to shut that shit down like that? That's my opinion. I've told
I
Josh that.
understand. I was just moving off of Israel Keys and back
I
on to
think Josh agrees that he's full of shit about a lot of things as
I'm
well,
sure he does.
so but
But
I mean, like, if you're a guy like Keys, what's more fun than fucking with the feds and sending them on wild goose chases?
right.
I mean, honestly.
So Fire Dancer says, I've read the defense went to the state asking for a plea. That would not be an unlikely scenario. That's more
Yep.
likely than not what happened. I mean, typically the prosecution's not I mean, it depends on the situation, but typically the defense is asking, um, or the state could just plea. And I didn't know. I was like, well, did the judge say that he was gonna? Did they have some sort of meeting with the judge where he was possibly contemplating taking it off the table for uh as a penalty? I mean, who knows? Who knows?
No, I don't need food. I'm gonna restate. So our air conditioning went down on Sunday night. We have a house and we've got one unit, one of those portable units, not a window unit, but like the rollers in our bedroom. And then we have one in our living room, kitchen area. So our house is incredibly uncomfortable. It's tolerable. That's so don't confuse my typical hanger with my hatred of feeling uncomfortable in the house. That's probably why I'm more in a little mood and I have to go stand in the 90-degree heat for 2 hours in about 30 minutes. So
Yeah,
that's where my head's at.
that's where his
So
head's at.
apologies if I seem a little short, but
All
that's
right.
the real.
So
Um,
imagine, I mean, I'm a victim. McAlbert says, imagine if he didn't leave the sheath. I mean, that's very true. I mean,
I mean,
it's
imagine if he didn't leave the sheath and he wasn't arrested and he's out doing this shit
well,
again.
yeah,
I mean, I'm obviously over like the Kohberger shit. Like I had a position on this case. Obviously, we had to wait till trial. I mean, everybody who watches us knows that. It's like I don't
right. You just had your initial
ever
feeling from
right,
the
which was spot on.
right.
I mean, the sheath thing. I'm like fucking people. I go, "Oh, it's transferred DNA, it's touch." I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, at the
Sheath
end
with
of
his with a like only his DNA. Just it wasn't a mixed profile under the snap, found
and at
under
the
one of
end
the
of the
bodies.
day, the defense admitted that that was his profile. So it
Yeah,
wasn't
and I've seen a lot of and as observers, I get how because there's a lot of angles to this, right? Like I get as observers, we're all disappointed because we all kind of wanted to see the trial, which obviously is selfish from our
right.
perspectives. We're not the families. This isn't our lives that were destroyed, So from that perspective, but and I get where Steve is, and I think I saw Xana's mother was very upset, and there's that eye for an eye mentality that I get completely because if somebody did this to one of my kids, I'd want them dead as well. Like there's a high likelihood that I would have tried to make that happen myself if somebody did this to one of my children. So I completely get it. What I'm trying to say, and I've been kind of talking about on Twitter, is that kind of the initial guttural response to hearing it from the families and again something that Ali and I talk about a lot on our channel is that prosecutors really don't talk to the families all that much leading into trials. Like families are not given all the details. Okay. Like, and it's not just this case, it's in general. Like, these are some of the insights that we give you guys that are factual. It's not shit that we're making up. It's not shit that we're guessing. It's shit that we know. Like, I've been dealing with prosecutors for a long time. I've been dealing with family members for a long time on both sides. And I see the appellate process in a death penalty case is fucking grueling. Grueling. 15, 20 years filing appeals, moving it up the chain. Then they move on to post-conviction work, and they're all the way to habeas work. It's never ending. And you've got these 4 families who are having to relive this shit, who are hearing about appeals being filed, who are not being told what it means. It's 20 years of added nightmare to get to the end game on a death penalty case. So while I understand their initial feelings, yeah, they are not emotional support animals. That is 100%, Michael. So in terms of kind of like it being a huge win financially for the taxpayers of Idaho, in that they're not going to have to pay for the trial, they're not going to have to pay to defend the appeals. Like, that all has to get paid for. Like, killing somebody, a government killing somebody, is a very expensive proposition. Just know that. It's far more expensive than it is to have somebody be in prison for the rest of their life, which, by the way, as I've said many, many times on this channel as well, is a way worse punishment than giving them the easy way out. It just is. It just is. Like, I mean, I would rather be dead than spending my life in a small box. But that's me personally. You know, like, I don't give a shit if this guy gets to watch TV. I don't give a shit if he gets to play checkers and spades. I don't care. I don't care. He is never walking outside of that cage again, ever, for the rest of his life. And it is absolutely the worst punishment known to mankind. There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than it. So, like, it's kind of what it's talking about Israel Keys. It's really what he wanted. Like, his thing was he was trying to fast track the death penalty, and his deal was, I'm going to give you all kinds of intel, but I don't want you talking about it because I've got a daughter out there, and I don't want her being exposed to the world and the world being exposed to her through me while I'm alive. So that's the deal. I'm going to give you intel, and what you're going to do for me is you're not going to put anything out to the public while I'm telling you the details. So, it was a weird deal, but I mean, from my perspective, and I think, and I hope against hope that the families realize down the road that this is an easier road for them to handle. I don't know if they're able to kind of envision just how traumatic a trial, a 6, 8, 12-week trial, going through all of the intimate details of those horrific, unthinkable crimes against the people they loved most in the world, how much that might in fact impact them. I can tell you from handling cases like that, it's devastating in a profound way that none of us, if we're fortunate enough, and I know we have some viewers that have had some horrific tragedies befall their families, but for the most part, none of us have had to experience anything like that. I just happen to think that it's a win, and I hope down the road that they feel that way, because what this means is there are no appeals. It's done. It's over. The guy's admitted the
acknowledging that
guilt. He's
he's
acknowledged it. We've gotten him off the streets, and it's game over.
right.
It's
And
game over. Like,
Camilla
and we
asks,
go ahead, babe.
how many times do you think Ann Taylor approached the DA? So, I mean, that all depends. In my experience, I try to not seem desperate. So, you know, I would get a bunch of stuff filed, have some, get some momentum behind myself. and then throw it out there when my case appears its strongest. But there's no way to guess here if she approached it multiple times, if they did approach. And it all obviously depends on whether her client wanted her to, you know, to ask to have the death penalty removed. I don't think they would have offered it in this situation with this high profile unless they had a reason to believe that he was inclined to accept it. But that's all supposition. There's no way to know at all. And Atheist Ant says every time someone takes a deal like this, it should be mandatory that they have to explain exactly what happened. Now, there will be a colloquy during the guilty plea, and a colloquy just means like a back and forth or questions. So typically the way it works is that the state says, if we would have gone to trial, we would have had this witness that testified he did this, 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 and that.
They call that a factual basis.
Right. They provide a factual basis of what the evidence would show, and then the judge turns to the defense, and the defense stipulates to that factual basis. And then when they plead guilty, they say, did you in fact do the things that they just said that you did? Yes, I did. So there's going to be some admission. Now, a why, that doesn't typically come out, but it might if they have a why. Like, for example, they were putting facts in that he had been following one of the girls or shopping near stores that they were shopping at. So if there's some of that, they may put those facts into evidence to flesh the story out. But exactly what happened, like, I went here first, I went there second. I mean, that's not something that typically they get into, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't say, "We'll offer you this plea so long as he provides more details about, about the offense."
Yeah, exactly. Idiot Win says, you'd say you'd rather be dead than spend your life in a small box, but the reality is that you have spent decades of your life, if not your whole life, in the unimaginable conditions of death row versus normal life. I mean, are you talking about normal life being Gen Pop? Like, I don't know that Kohberger ever would have been in Gen Pop. Even if, like, I mean, we'll find out. We'll find out if he's in Gen Pop. I just know that within the first year and a half of Gacy being in Gen Pop, or I think he might not even have been in Gen Pop at that point. He might have been, they got to him.
But
like they
either way, I think, sorry, babe.
Somebody tried to kill him with a fork. I mean, so like,
but I think what Indian Wind's getting at is that even when you're on death row, you're not put to death right away. So you do spend most of your life in a box before you're
something like 14, 15, 20 years. It ain't 60. It's different. It's different. I mean, Kohberger could have elected not to appeal had he gone to trial. That would expedite it. That's where you're really, if he's of the mindset, all right, well, I just want to expedite this, I'm not going to file any appeals. So, I mean, you're making your bed if you're going to fight the death penalty, in terms of, like, if you're not willing to expect or accept responsibility for your actions, even though you've been sentenced in a situation where you're factually the person who did it, right? I mean, we all know there have been way too many innocent people that have been put on death row. So I'm not talking about that. Like, I mean, like, we shouldn't have to explain on this channel that we understand completely that there are wrongfully convicted people in prison all over this country and on death row. So, but like, we're talking about a situation where somebody pleads out, but if they hadn't taken this off the table, it would have gone to trial. Like, he had no reason not to go to trial.
So, babe, you're going to have to leave us.
In 25 minutes. Why are you trying to get rid of me?
I thought you had to be there at 5:45.
No.
Okay, well, just so you know, your daughter, either I'm gonna run her to get something now, or you guys need to leave early.
For what?
She's hungry.
Oh.
And with everything going on, I haven't been to the market, so
Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, I haven't been to the market.
Well, neither of us. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so I may be staying past you, so maybe I'll run now.
No. I'll go a little early.
Okay. So Fire Dancer says, per ABC, the prosecutor said in a letter to the families that the state was approached last week by Kohberger's defense team asking to be presented with an offer, forfeiture of appeal rights. That is typical. Anytime that is mandatory. Anytime that you are accepting a guilty plea, you forfeit your appellate rights. I have asked on numerous occasions to preserve some appellate rights. I've never had a prosecutor allow for that. Sometimes you can, enter a special kind of plea and seek to preserve that, but there would be no benefit to the families or the prosecution to enter a plea like that in this case. It would be unheard of. So it was fully expected that by doing this, he forfeits any appellate rights. So anyone who thought, all right, well, he's going to plead guilty and then appeal. Nope, that's not what he's doing.
Osbrook says there's still a state post-conviction case to be had, more time to investigate. Good on the off chance he is innocent, and no sworn testimony except admissions to combat. So
wait. Michael's saying what?
I just put it up. It's right there in front of you.
Good on the off chance he is innocent. There is still state post-conviction case to be had, right? Well, wouldn't he be some sworn testimony at his guilty plea, Michael? I mean, he's going to make an admission by way of his guilty plea.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath for any.
Oh, he said no sworn testimony except the admissions to combat.
Yeah.
So what Michael's saying is, even though you waive your appellate rights, you still technically have your post-conviction rights. So if there's new evidence or something like that, or some special grounds that you could do it in your post-conviction case.
Yeah, here's the thing, that sheath though, I'm not holding my breath. This guy's a fucking murderer and he's going down on it, and I'm glad he's pleading out. I'm glad the families, it's as much as it would have been fascinating to watch the trial. I think Ann Taylor did a phenomenal job for him, and she got the result that any lawyer is looking for when you're handling a death penalty case. If you can preserve your client's right, like my dad with Gacy, that was an insanity defense case. That wasn't Gacy saying he didn't do it, right? And that was in 1980, trying to sell 12 people on the concept that you're holding him not responsible for killing 33 young men based on the fact that he couldn't control his compulsions, was like the impossible task. There was no way that they were ever going to sell that to him, and the concept once, which I still don't understand how Bill Kunkel, the lead prosecutor, was able to slip this in, that, there's a chance that if Gacy is considered to be all mended, like he's fixed mentally, that he has a chance of walking out, like the jurors like, oh no, not a chance. No chance in hell. So, but in that case, as horrible as a human being Gacy was, it still haunted my father that one of his clients received the death penalty on his watch. It's like, it's a different thing where you're the attorney handling that. I mean, you have to, because it's difficult to kind of separate the fact that, like, because that becomes your job, is trying to preserve your client's life from the government killing them, and that's like a whole different life in terms of, whether you're pro death penalty or anti death penalty, and, does the government have the right to kill us? Does eye for an eye really accomplish anything? It certainly isn't a deterrent. I think that there's been enough research that nobody's not going to do something that they're hell bent on doing because the death penalty exists. That's just not a thing. So,
right. And, Bluebird asks, do you think we will get to see all the evidence now and court documents, or do you think they will remain permanently sealed? With appeals not on the table, would that be legal grounds that it needs to be made public? There's no reason that they will keep this sealed afterwards that I can think of. I mean, obviously, they're not going to, I'm sure they'll keep some gruesome photographs and, things like that, sealed, I would assume. But no, there should be no reason to keep, like the entire case sealed or all the evidence sealed. But, evidence didn't become evidence because there was no trial. So whether or not the public will hear or see or know some of that, that is to be seen. And, I have to say, I hope, as Bob, you noted, that, maybe the family, after they uh, um, sort of digest the initial shock of this, or the initial information that he's not going to be eligible for the death penalty, that this would bring them peace. I was surprised that that's how families felt, because in my mind, I would think getting him to admit his guilt and not have to endure the trial and the appeals, all the things you said, that would bring the family peace. So
see, but it's hard because
we're not them.
Right, we're not them. And like I said, like if somebody did this to one of our kids, I'd probably be exactly like Steve. Like I would, as much as I'm anti-death penalty, but like I wouldn't. I don't know what I would do, but like I probably wouldn't
We'd
rely
find
on.
some solace in how he would be treated in prison.
Yeah, or I don't know.
I don't know.
It's hard. It's hard to know.
Hard to say, and I don't even want to think about it. Right.
Yeah. So let's see. Idiot Win says, sorry, I was just saying that I hate the idea of the death penalty ever being used as a bargaining chip. How quickly the prosecution agreed to this turnaround was disturbing. From Fam approached Friday last week. SC goes into more details. Yeah, I mean, it really wasn't that fast of a. I mean, look, we typically are getting our best deal because, like, the way it works, even in low felony cases, is that you're going to get the worst offer early on in the case. You have to go through the process in terms of filing your motions. If you've got any powerful motions, and Allie has always said this, like if she's got a legitimate motion to suppress or quash or whatever the case may be, we usually feel like at that point in time that we're going to have the best bargaining chip in terms of trying to get the best deal for our client. Because, I mean, again, don't forget, the largest part of our job is trying to get
a fair deal
wherein we know that our client committed the crime, but they're trying to apply a sentence that's just over the top.
Right.
They're not being
Overcharge,
reasonable.
over sentence, one or the other, or
One
both.
or the other. And it's different in homicide cases, obviously, but I mean, this is like Allie said, Ann Taylor had to go through and file everything that had to be filed. And I said this whenever we did our last Kohberger Live a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, you can kind of tell, and I think if you go back and watch that, I told you all, I'm like, you can kind of tell where Ann Taylor's mindset is in terms of, the things that she's pushing hard for. And granted, they needed to be filed, but in terms of kind of just doing them, going through the paces and getting these things on file, as opposed to her really, really fighting on these things, to me, was kind of illuminating in terms of what she may know, because Ann Taylor, again, knows way more than any of us do in terms of what evidence they had in its totality. We know what's been brought out in motion work. That does not mean it's all the evidence that they had, and even with the leaks, we still don't know all the evidence that they had. So, I mean, it's that thing where you sit down with your client and you're having a very frank discussion with that person about what you think is in their best interest based on our opinion and, our expertise in our handling of cases of this nature over the course of decades. It's like, if you have the opportunity to talk to your client about the concept of like, all right, look, do you want us to go talk to them? You know, because I'm telling you, I'm concerned. I mean, forget about the concept, which is always the overarching theme, is that you never know what a jury is going to do, which can work both ways in that conversation with your client. The fact of the matter is that when you see the evidence piled up, you can see where the state's case is going to go. You know, because you've been practicing for a long time, what's going to be powerful evidence in a court of law. It's well, it's right there. Papa Tragos is correct. You're not supposed to say they're factually innocent. It's unethical. Technically, you're supposed to say they're presumed innocent. That's correct. You know, but whenever she said that, it was early on. You know, so it was. I think probably one of those circumstances where maybe Bryan Kohberger was compelling to her initially in terms of the initial conversations, and she believed him, you know, and then when the evidence starts coming in and you start looking at it, it's like I talk about it all the time. You know, like our clients never come in and admit they did something. They're always, yeah, I didn't do this shit. Like, all right. And then when we start getting the discovery, like, all right, come on in, let's have a peek at this. And you know, I mean, we're gonna say this is pretty powerful evidence against you. You know, this is gonna be a problem for us. You know, it's like there's you can you can't really shine a turd like that. Like if you know that you've got a client that's going to go down because the evidence is that powerful, then you're starting that conversation. Well, you're not doing your job as the attorney if you're just blowing smoke up their ass, telling them, "Yeah, we'll take it to trial, we'll beat it." That's not what the job is. Good lawyers aren't doing that. That's not good lawyering. That's bad lawyering. That's like some ego-driven bullshit, and that's not what this job's about. It's a different set of circumstances if it's a situation wherein you're and I'm talking a lot, babe, because I am going to dip early. So, but you know, if you've got a situation wherein um, there's some real questions about your client's guilt, and or they have a shit case, i.e., Richard Allen. You know, it's like I just in a, like for the record, I'm going to say it again. Quit comparing Bryan Kohberger to Richard Allen. The cases are completely different. The evidence that they have against Richard Allen is horseshit. It always has been. So quit doing it. They're not the same people. They're not the same cases. They're not comparable. They're just not. So, and I tell people that all the time. Just quit comparing them. They're not comparable cases at all. Richard Allen, I believe in my heart of hearts, is factually innocent. So, all right, babe, do you got this? I love you guys. Sorry it was short. I wanted to jump on and make sure that we did something rather than nothing. So I love you guys, babe. I love you more. And I'll see you. I'll see you when I get back. I'll be. I keep. It's guaranteed. I'm going to be hot, sweaty, and crabby.
Hi. So just to touch on, you know, the victims' rights under in Idaho, their constitution does provide that they have the right to be heard upon request at all criminal proceedings considering a plea of guilty, sentencing, incarceration, or release the defendant. Um, so the family will have the right to be heard. It is very typical um, that the prosecution discusses and seeks approval from the victim's family before they offer a plea. We'll have to wait till we hear more from what at least we're hearing right now and what some of you are saying in the chat. It doesn't sound like that it may have been to that extent here. They may have just been informed that they were going to be making the plea. You know, some state statutes require that the consultation with the victims before any plea is offered. I know in Illinois, I often that always happens where the state needs to talk to the victim or the victim's family before they make an offer. Um, So I'm certain there was at least some discussion. I guess maybe one day we will find out, maybe we will, maybe we won't find out about how to what extent it was. They do specifically indicate that there's, the family doesn't have the ability to veto any sort of guilty plea. The court doesn't have the ability to void it because the family doesn't want it or the victim doesn't want it. So there's nothing that goes as far as, as that in this case. The Idaho Constitution guarantees the victim's right, again, to be heard upon request. So they do have the right to be heard even at the time where he'd be entering his guilty plea before the court accepts a guilty plea. But in Idaho, under their, manual for victims' right, it specifically says, there's a question in there, can the prosecutor enter into a plea agreement without the victim's knowledge? Yes, if the victim does not communicate with the prosecuting attorney after having been notified that discussions concerning a plea will take place. So it sounds like they would never enter the plea without at least the family's knowledge. So, and I was just looking to see if there was anything else in the victim's rights, but let me. So there's that. Better O Fans Girl says, "Do we think he'll give a full confession?" Again, at a bare minimum, he's going to have to admit to the facts that the state puts forward at the sentencing. I mean, at the guilty plea hearing. So during the colloquy, the state will set forth the facts, and then the defense will have to admit that he did uh, commit those offenses and act in the ways that are set forward. So the virtual juror asks, one, victims' families saved from trial trauma and not re-victimized for years. Right? It's a good point. Two, potential jurors saved from trauma. Well, yeah. Taxpayers saved from funding trauma. Right? Four, hopefully helps the overall healing process. Yeah. I mean, hopefully it will. Hopefully it will. And Rhonda says, apparently it's been reported that Kohberger's sister told police she thought the white car was his. Can you look it up? By the way, love from the UK. I mean, this is not something that I'm aware of. I'm just going to Google it real quick. I mean, there's something in here in the Independent from May of 2024 that the sister feared he was involved. So maybe that's, maybe that's accurate. Yeah, the Independent says that sources told NBC Dateline that the accused killer's family searched his white Hyundai Elantra for possible evidence for the Idaho College murderers. So maybe that's what it was, that they went in and checked the car. Like, all right, he might have done this. So the sister went to the parents' home, I guess, concerned, wanting to look through the car. So it does sound like his sister was concerned. And I think Bob did this one from Idiot Wind. Thank you very much, Idiot Wind. Mesme says he wrote letters to the parents, according to the media. Well, I guess we'll be seeing all about this then. And then Bob read this one from Idiot Wind as well. So thank you very much. Weird Debbie gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, Weird Debbie M. Idiot Win says again, sorry. Oh, I think Bob read this as well, but maybe not this one. So yes, Gen Pop, that's what I've been reading, like super max still. But what I'm saying is, what conditions would you rather spend those decades in? Because it will be decades, and people have pled because they don't want death row. I can name cases. Yeah, but do you think they were innocent? They were claiming that they were factually innocent and pled just to get off death row anyway? We'll have to look in the Mandy, if Idiot Win puts anything in the regular chat, let me know. But that's crazy if you're maintaining your innocence, that you would plead guilty just to avoid death row. But Shaboog says, we now refer to Kohbergers as Cope burgers. Cop burgers, Cope burgers. All right. Can KB try to get a new attorney and effective assistance of counsel? No. I mean, the only way that you can, use an effective assistance of counsel to get out of a plea is like there was this bombshell evidence that would have shown your innocence that they never told you about, or they lied to you about the evidence, or I mean, there are some things, but that's you know, Halls says, any chance that at all tomorrow's hearing could possibly be changed his plea from standing silent to not guilty? I mean, anything can happen tomorrow. He can change his mind anytime before he enters a plea. The gag order will be lifted when the guilty plea is entered, I'm sure. And I guess we'll have to see what evidence, starts to come out, but I would suspect that more would start to come out. I don't know if we both hit the same thing, hit things at different times, Mandy. Can Judge Hippler not approve the plea deal? No, only if the defendant were to try to deny that he actually is guilty, like maintain his innocence. I don't know what Idaho's rule is on that, but I'm sure in this case they're not allowing him to enter a plea like that. Judges usually don't approve pleas if the person's showing some hesitation, they haven't talked to their lawyer, but they can accept a plea and say, just so you know, I'm not bound by the sentence that you guys have agreed to, and I can sentence you however I want. And that does happen. But I think, and I'd have to look at Idaho's law, because actually, I'm not sure if they take the death penalty off the table, if it's like they're changing the actual offense, or they're changing something on the indictment that actually makes it that death is not a sentence that the judge could even impose. But I'd be shocked if they entered. I can't think of a situation where the judge would say, no, I'm sorry, I'm still sentencing you to death, even though you entered a guilty plea for a life sentence. But it happens, it can happen like, well, we agreed to 10 years, and the judge can say, nope, you know what? I'm giving you 20. And that is allowed, and that happens, and you can't undo your guilty plea just because the judge didn't file the sentence. But I don't think that that's something that could happen here, but I'd have to give it some more thought. Bob kind of sprung this live on us, and we've been at the hospital all day. So the virtual drawer says, no specific son of Sam law says convicted has to report earnings on such things to the court and can be used for restitution. Like if he somehow is making money off of it, that it could go to the family. The Squid says, I was neutral on Kohberger being guilty because the gag orders came so early and we didn't know what they had. I guess the guilty plea answers that question. I hope the families find peace and closure. Agreed, the Squid. Idiot wins back again. Prosecution's turnaround, not defenses. I completely support what Ann Taylor did here, testing the case at this point. Wanted to clarify bothered prosecution can use as a bargaining chip. Right. I see your point that you do not like the death penalty being used as a bargaining chip. Um, you know, can the prosecution withdraw the plea deal once the defendant has accepted it? No, not once it's accepted. It's considered a contract, a binding contract. So even if they somehow tried it, and it's not accepted yet, it's not accepted until they're in, in court. But, uh, you know, but so no, once a defendant enters a guilty plea, well, can they withdraw it when the defendant accepts it? I don't know. It's a complicated question. It depends. Is this in writing that, yes, we've offered it and I accept it? You know, technically, can they withdraw it before he enters it? I mean, if something new comes up, if something happened, sure, yeah. Before the actual plea is entered, there could be a scenario where the prosecution can withdraw it. Oh, so thanks, Vegas. And thank you, Brooklyn. Thank you, Brooklyn. So, guys, there's a lot going on. Psycho asks, is it possible he's going to enter an Alford plea? I touched on that earlier. I can't imagine that the prosecution would do that. The whole point is, I think, that he accepts responsibility, admits his guilt. That doesn't bring the family much closure. I don't know what um, but some states allow people to enter an Alford plea no matter what. Um, I was going to try to do a quick look in Idaho, but so a quick search would say, with the approval of the court and the consent of a prosecuting attorney, um, the defendant may enter a conditional plea of guilty, um, reserving rights for something or to appeal. Um, but I don't think that that's going to happen here. So I think that um, in general, it says a defendant can enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. If the defendant refuses to plea, or if a defendant's corporation fails to appear, the court may direct the entry of a guilty plea. So I do not think that he can enter based on a quick search. And I'm looking at the Idaho rules of criminal procedure for pleas, that the defendant can enter a Alford plea without the approval, the consent of the prosecuting attorney. And it's, although some states do allow it. But again, that's a quick search. So that's a quick search. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine any set of circumstances that would allow the state or the judge to want to accept an Alford plea for a case like this. Hank's little Bulger says finding the leak is no bueno. It could have been a Pennsylvania law enforcement or FBI leak, and ID court investigators aren't and can't do it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on with the leak. I don't know if it's sort of a a non-issue at this point, or if people have sort of, the court's even still, you know, looking into it even. But that there'll be documentaries, movies. People will be digging into this long after any sort of guilty plea. And how much we ever find out, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But, it's definitely something from a psychological standpoint, from a human factor standpoint. Like, we, the public, kind of need a reason, right? We need to know why, how, what is happening. So eh, eh, there'll definitely be no shortage of people trying to get as much information and evidence out there. And the prosecution can release the I would not be surprised if the prosecuting office released additional information so that the public did get some better understanding. But who's to know? Mandy's asking if there could be a civil case. There could always be a wrongful death case. I mean, if the family is somehow left feeling that they don't know enough, they haven't been told enough, that could be motivation to, um, to pursue a civil suit just to get more information. But I would hope that with this, the prosecuting office the state's going to provide them as much information as they can. Um, and it sounds like some of the family is going to be speaking out. So we'll have to stand by and see what everyone says. So I think for now, we've sort of gone over all the things we can go over. Appreciate you guys all checking in. We will be covering the hearing that hopefully happens tomorrow. So tune into us again. Looks like I've gotten through all your you guys supers. But, again, I know at least what's being put out there, it appears that the family is not, happy about this. But who knows how they will feel after they process everything and have some more time to think about it. I really hope that the family gets relief, some sense of relief, that they feel that they have justice. I mean, that is the number one reason for a plea deal. So it would be really sad to see them accept a plea deal and that the family have such and the family feel really badly about it. That's very, very unfortunate. But I appreciate you guys all being here. Thank you, mods. Thank you, everyone who did supers and all the members. And thank you guys for coming. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.